Did that scare you? Thought it'd be a little silly. Today was a spooky lesson. Well, what we're doing today, we've got my helper Fred with me today. But what this is day 18, lesson 26. I can compare fractions, and this is fraction. I just kind of wiped it on accident. Fractions greater than 1 using those symbols, greater than or less than, greater than 1 by reasoning using benchmark fractions. Okay, once again, that's a lot of words. But what that really means is we are just going to see which fraction is larger or greater than or less than, and we're going to use benchmark fractions. And benchmark fractions, because I've had a lot of questions about that, benchmark fractions are just this. A benchmark fraction is a common fraction that we can measure or judge against. Some examples are 1/2 or 1/4. Like we know what 1/2 and 1/4 are. If I drove that pizza, you know that 1/4 is 1 piece out of 4 pieces of pizza. Or 1/2. We know what 1/2 looks like. And I also put 1 whole down here because there's going to be a lot of times that we're going to also use, well, not just 1 whole, but 1 whole, 2 whole, 3 whole, like whatever the number is, that whole number. But that's also a fraction, because remember, 1 whole is the same thing as like 5/5 or 6/6 or 4/4. It's just the entire pizza was eaten. That's what we're doing here. This will also be a slightly different video, as this is going to be kind of one continuous shot. Mrs. Wessner is recording, and what I'm going to do is I've got the guided practice right here. So right now, while I'm talking, you need to make sure you have the guided practice in front of you. I'm going to go through, honestly, probably every problem on here, or most of them, and you can fill in the answers. But remember, what is due when you turn your work in is that you don't have to, like, if this isn't filled in, I'm not counting off. But what I want to see is I want to see the assignment or the homework page is done. And the homework page is exactly like this. It's done the exact same way. So if you follow my instructions and how I work this, you will be fine. If you want to work on your homework and pause this and then work on your homework page, that might be helpful too. There's so many different ways you can do this. But this is just going to be one continuous video. So that being said, let's go ahead and let's look at the first problem. And I'm going to write them down on my personal whiteboard to get us going. But directions for number 1A say to plot the following points on the number line without measuring. Well, the first thing I would do is you've got your number line. I'm going to go ahead and draw my number line right here. Draw my number line. And it starts at 2. It goes to 3. And then the end is 4. Well, my advice to you is go ahead and just take these 1, 2, 3, and 4 and just separate them cut these in half. So between 2 and 3, just cut that in half. And that's my 2.5 spot, right? And between 3 and 4, go ahead and cut that in half. And you've got your little dashes there. And you'll have a worksheet, so you can put your little dashes on your worksheet. Now I've got this. There's 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. And of course, remember, they don't have to be perfect. We're not measuring. It said without measuring. And Fred is up here. He's really wanting some attention. The first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at those 2 fractions I have there, 2 7/8 and 3 1/6, because those are both mixed numbers. And I know that 2 7/8 is going to be somewhere over here, somewhere between 2 and 3. But I need to know, where am I going to put it? Well, 2 7/8. Well, I know that 2 7/8 there, well, there are 8/8 in 1 whole. And half, if I was going to make that 2.5, it would be 2 4/8, right? Because half of 8 is 4. Well, 4/8 is 1/2. Well, then 7/8 is bigger. That's a larger numerator. So 7/8 is going to be somewhere over here. So I'm going to put this, I'll put a little point right here, and I'm going to call this, and I'll write it above that line, 2 7/8. But we know that 2 7/8 is not 3. It's not greater than 3. It can be actually less than 3. The next one I'm going to move to is number 2. Roman numeral 2 is 3 1/6. Well, I know 3 1/6 is over here. It's going to be past 3. But is 3 1/6 greater than or less than 1/2? Well, I know 3/6 are 1/2. So 1/6 is going to be less than my 3/6. So I'm going to put 3 1/6 right, just somewhere right here, and call this 3 1/6. Now remember, I didn't measure this. I'm just going to put this somewhere down there. I know it's less than that 1/2. And now I come to the funky one. I've got, for Roman numeral 3, I've got 29 twelfths. Well, 29 twelfths, this is where, if you know your multiplication facts, this should be pretty easy. Or you can just go ahead and divide. But I know that 1 whole divided into twelfths is 12 twelfths. 2 wholes is 24 twelfths. And 3 wholes will be 36 twelfths. Well, we know it's not going to be greater than 3. We know this is going to be 2. I can do my cowboy method way if I needed to. Cowboy. And I can say 29 divided by 12 equals, that's going to go 2 times. 2 times 12 is 24. And that's going to leave me with 5. And it's going to be 2 5 twelfths. Because 2 5 and 12 is my denominator. So I've got 2 5 twelfths. Well, now I need to know, we know it's going to be less than 3, but is 5 twelfths greater than or less than 1/2? Well, I know that 6 twelfths is 1/2, and this is going to be less, so I'm going to put this right here and call this 2 5 twelfths. Now, for 1A, I have got all of my points plotted on that line. Go ahead and erase this work right here. If you need to, you can pause and make sure you have your numbers up there. So now we have our number line, and we've got 2 5 twelfths, 2 7/8, and 3 1/6. So remember, as the numbers go this way, they're getting greater. So now we're just going to use this information right here to answer part B. Part B says I've got 29 twelfths and 2 7/8. Well, if I look up here and I see that, remember, this number right here, this 2 5 twelfths, was really the same thing as 29 twelfths. And we know 29 twelfths is my smallest fraction, and they just get bigger. So if this is my smallest fraction, well, it automatically has to be less than 2 7/8. And let's look at the next one. Well, if that's my smallest fraction, in part Roman numeral 2 says 29 twelfths and 3 1/6. Well, once again, that's my smallest fraction. So it's going to be less than 3 1/6. Because we know 29 twelfths is really the same thing as 2 5 twelfths. There is how you do it. If you want to pause to make sure you've got it, that'd be great. I'm going to move on to the next one, the next problem, which is done the exact same way. And you will notice on your homework that 1A on the homework will be done the exact same way that we did this, using the benchmark fractions. But the first step is you want to add those little tick marks for the 1/2 point. Okay, I'm erasing my board. Now we're moving on to, we've got 3 fractions here. We've got 79ths. I've got 8 2/4. And I hope everybody's seeing that. That's 8 1/2. And I've got 25 thirds. Let's go ahead and draw our number line. Now, they've already got a number line drawn for you. They've got 7, 8, 9. And if you remember from the previous problem, I said the first thing I would do here is go ahead and draw the halfway point. There's 7.5. There's 8.5. Well, now we just need to plot those three fractions at the top on our number line. Well, let's look. The first one, we've got 70/9. Well, that's kind of funky because I don't have this divided into ninths all the way from 0 to whatever. So I'm going to take this and solve this the same way we did before. And I'm going to say, using the cowboy method, this is 70 divided by 9. And 9 goes into 7 0 times. But 9 goes into 70 7 times. And 7 times 9 is 63. Subtract it. 70 minus 63 is 7. So my new fraction is going to be, and I'll write it in red up here, 7 is my whole number. 7 is my numerator. And 9 is still my denominator. Erase that. If you need to, you can rewind to that. So now I'm going to go ahead and plot 7 and 7/9 on this. Never. Well, 9 is not an even number. 9 is an odd number. And if I want to know what is half of 9, or half of my ninths, I know that half of 8 is 4, and half of 10, the two even numbers that surround it, 8 and 10, half of 8 is 4, half of 10 is 5. So the halfway point for my ninths is going to be somewhere between 4 and 5. So I'm going to say I've got 7. We know it's going to be greater than 7, but not bigger than 8. And this is actually going to be, because it's greater than, this is actually greater than the halfway point, it's going to be somewhere right, we'll call it right here. 7 and 7/9. All right, we've got the first one plotted. Well, the second fraction we have up here, 8 and 2/4, well, we know that 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. So this is going to be an easy one. That one actually goes right there. 8 and 2/4. And now finally, we come to our last one. Once again, use our cowboy method. 25 goes in the house. 3 goes outside, because there's my horse. And we're going to say, how many times will 3 go into 25? Well, 3 goes into 2 0 times, but 3 goes into 25 8 times. 8 times 3 is 24. 25 minus 24 is 1. 8's my whole number. 1's my fraction. Or 1's my numerator. 3's my denominator. So I'm going to have this one as a mixed number is 8 and 1/3. Well, 8 and 1/3. Let me erase this right here. Now, 8 and 1/3. What I have to figure out is 1/3 less than, we know it's going to be past the 8, is 1/3 less than or greater than 1/2? Well, it's going to be less than, because 1/3, half of my thirds will be somewhere between 2 and, or 1 and 3, or it's going to be somewhere in between 2 and whatever, so it's going to be right here. Sorry, I got a little confusing right there. I'm trying to write this. 8 and 1/3. 2/3 is greater than 1/2. That's what I'm trying to say. 2/3 is greater than 1/2. 1/3 is less than 1/2. So there we go. Now we have our three fractions plotted on our number line. This one, 7 and 7/9 is my smallest, or the 70/9. 8 and 1/3 is in the middle, and 8 and 2/4 is my largest fraction. Well, now when I look at part B just says, compare the following, writing greater than, less than, or equal to. I've got 8 and 2/4, which we've already said is our largest fraction, and 25/3. Well, if that's my largest fraction, we know that has to be greater than, because that was the furthest one on my number line to the right. And then my next one says 70/9 and 8 and 2/4. Well, once again, we already said that 8 and 2/4 is my largest fraction, so it's going to be my greater. So 70/9 is less than 8 and 2/4. That's how you do it. Now you will have a part C, and here's what I want you to do. Just cross it out. You don't have to do that. Don't worry about the explaining. I just want to make sure you know how you put these on those lines. So the front side of your homework is going to be done just exactly like this. I'll go ahead and you can pause this while I'm erasing, and we're going to move to the back side. Do, 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 do. I'll get the music this time. Do, do, do. And I gotta come over here. Here we go. On the back side of this worksheet, you are no longer drawing number lines. Now we're just going to use the benchmark fractions we know. But some of these are actually going to be pretty easy. This is where I said, think about a whole number as a benchmark fraction. So for 3a, I have, I don't know how to write that, 5 1/3 blank 4 3/4. Well, in this case, we can ignore these fractions right here because we already know that our whole numbers are different. Our whole numbers are different. And you know that this is 5 and this is 4. Then which is going to be greater? 5 1/3. It doesn't matter what those fractions say. 4 3/4 is a smaller fraction. So 5 1/3 is greater than 4 3/4. A is going to be an easy one. Let's look at B. B says 12 6 and 25 twelfths. 6 6 make 1 hole. 12 6 make, and that's 2 holes. And if you want, go ahead and write it underneath there. That's 2 holes. And let's look over here. Once again, we're just using benchmark fractions. 12 twelfths make 1 hole. 12 times 2 is 24 twelfths make 2 holes. And this is greater than 24. So this is going to actually be just 1/12 larger. So we know that this is 2, and this is actually 2 1/12. Well, this is it, because what they want you to see here is that both of these have the whole number of 2, but this has just a little bit more. This is 2 plus 1/12. Okay? And once again, you don't have to give a brief explanation for each one. I just want to see that you're putting these symbols in there. Erase this. Moving on to C. We have got, for C, we've got 18 sevenths and 17 fifths. Well, here's where we get to practice that cowboy method again. 18 sevenths is 18 is in the house, 7 is my horse, and we know that 7 won't go into 1, but 7 goes into 18. Well, 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21, but that's too big, so it's going to be 2. And 7 times 2 is 14. And 18 minus 14 is 4. So this is going to be 2 4 sevenths. Okay. Now we have to cowboy method over here because we can't compare them the way they are. And we've got 17 in the house. There's my cowboy. My horse is outside. And I know that 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 4 is 20. That's too much, so it's going to be 3. So 3 times 5 is 15. And 17 minus 15 is 2. So my new fraction here is going to be 3 2 fifths. Well, if this one goes up there, and that one's to there, which one's going to be greater? The 17 fifths. Because just look at my whole numbers here. Just look at those whole numbers. Okay. I'm going to erase these. It gives you a chance to, you could have paused and make sure you have those written down. But once again, sometimes you want to get these in that common form. You want them all to have want them all to have their be in the same form. Like, it's really best to put them in as a mixed number. Let's look at D. D says 5 2/5 and 5 5/8. Well, they both have 5s there, so I really don't even have to pay attention to these things. Now I'm just looking at these two fractions. Well, we know that half of 5 is somewhere between 2 and 3. So this is actually going to be less than 1/2. This is less than 5 1/2. And half of 8 is going to be 4/8. So this 5/8 is greater than 4/8. So if this is less than 1/2 and this is greater than 1/2, there's my answer. I know that because I can ignore my whole numbers because they're the same thing. I look to see, well, my benchmark fraction of 1/2. I know this one's 2/5 is smaller than 1/2 and 5/8 is greater than 1/2. So there's my answer. Let's look at E. E says 6 2/3 and 6 3/7. Well, looky here. Once again, they both have the same whole number. Mark them out if you need to. Now we're just comparing 2/3 and 3/7. Well, as we learned in one of the previous problems, 2/3 is actually greater than 1/2 because half of when I take a number and I divide it into thirds, halfway between there's going to be somewhere between 1/3 and 2/3, and this is going to be greater than that point. So this is actually going to be 6 and something larger than 1/2, and 7ths. Well, if I divide something in 7ths, the halfway point is going to be somewhere between 3/7 and 4/7, and this is less than 4/7, so that's going to be less than 1/2. So we know 6 2/3 is going to be, because it's greater than 1/2, and this one's less than 1/2. 6 2/3 is greater than. Let's look at F. 31/7 and 32/8.
What are you so angry about?
Well, this is an interesting problem. If you know your multiplication facts and you know your 8s, you are going to know that 32/8, I can multiply 8 times 4 to get 32. So, because I know 8/8 is 1 whole, 16/8 is 2 wholes, 24/8 is 3 wholes, and 32/8 is 4 wholes. So this is 4 wholes. And then we can kind of go back over to this side. We can do the cowboy method. And we've got 31 divided by 7. And I know that 7 can't go into 3, but it goes into 31. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 5 is 35. But that's way too much, so it's going to be 4. 4 times 7 is 28. And 31 minus 28 is 3. So this is going to be 4 3/7. Well, 4 3/7 is going to be greater than just 4 without any fraction. Okay. While I'm erasing that, you can pause this. I'm just going to erase this real quick. We're almost finished with this worksheet. We've got 31/10 and 31/10 and 25/8. Well, the way these both are, I can go ahead and just convert these. What's in probably the cowboy way. This will be 31 divided by 10. And I know we haven't divided a 2-digit number by a 2-digit number yet, but if you know your 10s, 10 times 1 is 10, 10 times 2 is 20, 10 times 3 is 30, 10 times 4 is 40. Well, that's going to be too much, so it's going to be 3, and 3 times 10 is 30. That's going to leave me with 1. So this is going to be 3 1/10. Well, then I just have to go over here to this second fraction, 25/8, and just do the cowboy method there. 25 in the house, 8 outside. And once again, you should know your eights by now. I can say, well, 8 times 3 is 24, and 8 times 4 is 32. Well, 4 is too big, so 3. 8 times 3 is 24, and 25 minus 24 is 1. So now I've got a fraction that says 3 and 1/8. Does this help us? Yes, it does. Because we have talked about this before, way back when we left. If my numerators are the same and my denominators are different, remember, this meant I divided this pizza into 10 pieces. This meant I divided that pizza into 8 pieces. And one piece of an 8-piece pizza is larger than one piece of a 10-piece pizza. So if I have the same numerator, the fraction that's larger is the fraction that has the smaller denominator. The fraction that is larger is the fraction that has the smaller denominator if they have the same numerator. Okay. Erasing this. 39/12 and 19/6. And 19/6. Once again, we just have to go through and do our cowboy method. 39 is here. 12 goes out here. And I say, well, this is where you need to know your multiplication facts. We know that 12 times 3, you should know 12 times 3 is 36, and 12 times 4 is 48. Well, that's too big, so we're going to do 3 up here. And 12 times 3 is 36. 9 minus 36 is 3. So this new fraction is going to be 3 is my whole number. 3 is my numerator. 12 is my denominator. Do the same thing over here with our second fraction. 19 divided by 6. Well, 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24, but that's way too big. So we're going to say 6 times 3. 3 times 6 is 18. And that's going to leave me with a 1. And my new fraction is going to be 3 and 1/6. Now we've got, can we compare these things the way they are? Well, we're going to figure out, they have a different denominator and different numerators. Well, what I would do here, is there anything I can multiply 12 by? Or 2 to get to, or 6 to get to 12? Yes, multiply it by 2. And whatever I do to my denominator, I got to do to my numerator. And my new fraction is going to be 3 and 6 times 2 is 12. 1 times 2 is this. Now can I compare them? Yes, I can. See, there's a lot of steps to these sometimes. So 3 and 3/12 is going to be larger than 3 and 2/12. I just had to make them, kind of give them the same denominators. So all the way back up here. But you know what I always say? I said many paths lead to the same answer. I could have actually skipped all this and just done this and said, well, let's look at this fraction right here. This has got a 12 in the denominator, and this has got 6 in the denominator. Well, can I multiply 6 by anything to get to 12? Yes, I can. 6 times 2. And whatever I do to my denominator, I got to do to my numerator. And this is going to be, well, 6 times 2 is 12, and 19 times 2 is 38. And we could say 39/12 is greater than 38/12. And that's actually probably the faster way. My bad. Finally, we have got, L is going to be an easy one. L will be an easy problem. We've got 49 50ths and 3 and 91 hundredths. Well, guess what? This is greater than 1. It's got a whole number. Is my numerator smaller than my denominator? Yes, it is. So this is less than 1 whole. So this has to be less. This doesn't have a whole number with it. This is a regular proper fraction, and this is a mixed number. And I can't think of a single regular proper fraction that is not smaller than an improper, or smaller than a mixed number. And our final problem is 5 and 5/12 and 5 and 51 hundredths. I can't multiply 12 by anything to get 100. They have a different denominator or numerator. Wait a minute. 6/12 is 1/2, and this is less than 1/2. And 51 hundredths is 1/2, and this is greater than 1/2 because that's 51 hundredths. So that's gonna be larger than 1/2, and that's gonna be smaller than 1/2. Guess what? There you go. Well, there was a lot of talking there to this problem, to this worksheet, but you have all of the answers right there in front of you. If you need any help, please message me if you need any questions. But make sure you're looking, you're checking. Do they have the same numerator? If they have the same numerator, then look at their denominators, and whichever one has a smaller denominator, there's your bigger fraction. Sometimes compare them to the 1/2 point. If you need anything, please message me. Send me a message. Send me a message through Class Dojo, through Class Tag, or on this YouTube video. I will see anything. I will respond to you. I will contact you. That being said, I wish everybody good luck. Remember, you do not have to mark any. You don't have to explain anything. I just want to see you use your symbols, your greater than, your less than, and your equal to symbols. On that note, I will see you all soon. Bye.